Hello, and welcome to another installment of What Dumb Idea Did Steve Have running this morning? This week's episode, I guess, is about this here. It's about this presentation that I very hastily assembled this morning, and the screencast, which I'm not nearly as prepared for as I usually am for my screencast. But I was thinking about where many of you are in, your writing process, and it seems to me that most of you have gotten to your observation site at least once, and you've taken some notes. Hopefully you'll go back, or you'll be able to. But even if you only go once, hopefully you have lots of data that you've collected. And now you're maybe sitting, wherever you're sitting, and you see all this data, and you're wondering sort of what do I do with it, or what ideologies should inform my approach to taking what I have and shaping and molding that data into an argument. And that's what that's what action research does, and that's what you're doing. You're taking action and you're turning it, into research. I'm not going to get very scientific method-y on you because I am a long time removed from anything that even remotely resembles a science class. So, if that sort of thinking guides you, please let it. If you want to turn this into a more formalized sort of report, with methods and the review literature and discussion areas for further research, I would love that. Go for it. Please do. But I'm coming at it from I come from things from a more sociological perspective because that is my training as an English person, and it just kind of resonates a little more with me. So I'm going to try to give you both sides of that. I don't want to make it sound too binary. It's not like one or the other. As you're going to see, you can mix and match lots of methods in the way I conceive what research can do, what self-generated primary research is capable of. So anyway, before I talk too much more, I'll go big screen real quick. I always want your emails. I want them. I want to know how things are going. I want to know what's going smoothly. I want to know what's going less smoothly so I can help you make them go more smoothly. I want to help you. The best way for me to do that is to know that you need help, and the best way for you to let me know is by emailing me. We can FaceTime, we can Skype, we can have a phone conversation. I can come visit your school. Whatever it takes to make you feel successful in this essay and in this class, I am willing to do it. I just need to know what those things are. I feel like I'm doing them, or I'm trying my hardest to do them. If I'm not, I need to know that too. So I want your emails. Okay, I think you get that point. So reminders, tips, suggestions, and warnings, I guess is how we're going to go. So dear Lord, do I not like presentations where the person just reads off of the slides. I have nightmares, literal nightmares, where that's the sort of professor I become, where I just walk into a room and just read off the PowerPoint, and the class is reading off the PowerPoint. Everybody's bored, and everyone knows it's available on Blackboard or whatever learning management system. So anyway, here's me talking over a couple of slides. Let's see how this goes. So you should know all this, that you're not really meant to disrupt. You're not really meant to disrupt the observation site. You are meant to collect lots and lots of data. I can't click like I usually like to, and that's going to bother me. The more visits to the site, the more data you'll generate, and also more patterns will emerge. More on that later. You need to have a responsible and reliable note-taking system, and I would like to learn about it in some way. Hopefully that makes it into your paper. And really an important thing that you can do at your site, but hopefully you have an idea of it already, is what is the goal of your site? Why do people go to where you're observing? Okay, it's sort of like matching up an audience. If everybody goes to, if you go observe, I don't know, a movie theater, and everybody's coming out of a horror movie, and you observe like, well, that's weird, nobody's laughing. Well, yeah, no, they're probably pretty shook up if it's a good horror movie, right? The Sundance Film Festival, quick tangent, is happening right now, and one of my former students is actually there as a production assistant, and he texted me this morning that he saw a movie called, was it Heredity or Hereditary? I think it's Hereditary. Oh, I'm not going to look it up. Hereditary. It sounds like it's a really good scary movie if you're into that sort of thing. Anyway, what is the goal of your site? If it's a restaurant, what sort of restaurant is it? If going to McDonald's is different from going to Chick-fil-A, is different from going to Panera, is different from going to Olive Garden, is different than going to Bender's and or 91. You know what I mean? So Twisted Olive, all the different restaurants around here. So you need to think about that too. What is the goal of the place? What is its purpose? What is its feature? Why are people there? And that can really help you tie what you observe to the place that you observed it. Very important stuff. I hope that really gets through. What is the goal of the site? You'll know I'm almost done when we circle back to that idea. Good? Good. Let's see. sit back here. Critical incidents is one thing that you can observe a lot of. Now, I've already given you your note-taking sort of framework to operate within, but critical incidents, just to give you some more terminology from the kind of sociological field. Critical incidents focus on actions, specifically sort of key interactions, sometimes between strangers, sometimes usually between people that know each other, but they're out in public and they're interactions that you observe, or the interaction implies that two people are doing something. Action means at least one person's doing something, maybe someone else is not maybe as aware of the interaction. So don't feel like it has to be two people out loud speaking to each other. Who are the players involved? Police officers. This comes from law enforcement, critical incidents. Anytime a police officer has to unholster their gun in most states, they have to write up a critical incident report, or at least that's what it was called 20 years ago when I was in graduate school. So that means that they had to write down every moment. And from what most police officers say, and I've read plenty of critical incident reports in my graduate years, is that as soon as the gun starts coming out of the holster, the time slows down, and they do what is called thin slicing. It's called thin slicing, where every moment, you've been in those moments maybe where your adrenaline pumps up and you're much more aware of your surroundings, right? It's like your mind is kind of taking a panoramic picture instead of a quick snapshot. That's what critical incidents are. You slow down and you describe every single aspect of it. They need to be thickly described. Bullet time, if you're old enough, or maybe your parents saw it, maybe they liked The Matrix when The Matrix was a popular movie, but it revolutionized this idea of, you could shoot at Neo, the main character, but he was so far ahead of the bullets that he could kind of bend and spin around them. Look it up on YouTube sometime, but it's kind of like that. It's where time slows down. So critical incidents need to be very thickly described and done and described in a way that kind of places the reader right there in the moment, right? It's very action-based. It's also a really good form of writing to get some practice at, to write in a very thickly detailed way. Okay, it's again, I don't want to get into binary thinking. Another way to approach writing up what you've seen is through the idea of case studies. Okay, and case studies we fill in the gaps a little bit with case studies. We kind of try to suppose what people are thinking or feeling, and that's really what a case study does. It's a little more emotionally grounded. It's individualized as well, and it tends to focus on a person, but it can, if it's a family or a couple, you can sort of craft a case study around their feelings and interactions. So a small group, I'll let you determine what small is, but it seems to be a bit more of the emotions involved, and we have this idea. This is really, I think it's a very important idea of micro-messaging. Is that another sort of attendant phrase around that is microaggressions, which you maybe have heard about in other contexts, but we send everybody micro messages all the time. Sometimes they are nice, sometimes they're not nice, sometimes we know we're doing them, sometimes we don't. Keep an eye out for those very subtle incidents. Who hasn't been, let me go big screen for a second, who hasn't been, oh my goodness, am I going to act? Who hasn't been in a situation like this? Like person A is like, I have such exciting news to tell you. You'll never guess what happened to me today. You never guess who I ran into. You never guess what they told me. And then person B is, right? We've all been in that situation. And if you're observing personal digital technology, well, there's not a whole lot of, there's some dialogue that you could record for sure, but there's a lot of micro messaging. Is that, the priority here is on, on the phone. Can you see that? Took my daughter to the jogging stroller on Sunday, drug her through the snow. It was very fun. Anyway, back to case studies. You can get a gist of how someone's feeling. Like if a mother is just over her kids, every parent has been there, I think, is where if you're in public and your child's just not behaving, it is so easy to hand a phone off. And so if you can just see a mother or a father reach that breaking point, that point of exasperation, just say, here, watch Netflix, right? Watch whatever troll show you're into, kid. And so that can tell you a lot, even though it's not very heavily, there's not a lot of heavy action in it, like in critical incidents. Case studies can still tell you quite a bit because you can sort of harvest the feelings involved and put them to good use. I hope that makes sense. Again, I want your emails if it doesn't. Okay, now let's talk about your role in all this. Now, you can mix and match for as far as I'm concerned. Non-participant observation is just that. It's a dry focus. It's like you're invisible. You pretend to be invisible, and that invisibility. Now you should try to be invisible throughout the observation process. You don't want to disrupt the site that you're observing, but you carry that invisibility all the way through of the writing, where you're not really a featured component of your argument. And again, if you're more of a sort of a left brain person, this is probably how you're going to want to approach your essay as a non-participant. Or if you're someone who doesn't use your tech too much, or doesn't have a lot of opinions about people and their technology use, well then you can go on the facts of the observation. You're objective at all times, and your argument is it's going to be a little more, I don't know, austere. It's going to be a little more formal, a little more clinical, white lab coat, that sort of thing. Now, participant observation is sort of, you swing the gate the other way, is that you let all of your perspectives inform and filter your argument. Okay, so everything, I mean, in a very esoteric sense that I'm not going to get into, we can't help but filter what we see through our own lives. Non-participant observation, which is a more classical form of observational research, kind of wants to deny that part of it, and then participant observation research embraces it and says we absolutely can't get rid of who we are and what we see. We have to filter it through our lives. Very famous Prussian philosopher Immanuel Kant came up with this idea, more or less, about 230 years ago, if you care. Let's see. So you filter everything through your life, through experiences that you've had, through your emotions. How did something make you feel? It's not enough to just write about a critical incident, but how did it make you feel? I felt so bad for that kid. Well, that tells you something. You can take that feeling and you can scaffold it up to make an argument in a very effective way. I see a lot of very successful participant observational essays come out of this assignment. So you can also, now emotions are one thing, but opinions are another. Every parent has an opinion. Every non-parent has an opinion about how children should be treated in public, right? I wasn't one of those guys, but I certainly was around them. Oh, when I have kids, they'll never watch TV. We won't even, they'll never have my phone. That's just not really how the world really operates anymore. Go to my kids' basketball practice on Saturday and watch what happens with all the little, the younger kids. They all have phones on them. It's sort of an unavoidable part of modern life. But there are still people, especially non-parents, who have an opinion like, well, this is bad parenting. So, feel free to disagree with me, of course. But if you see something and you're able to filter it through your own perspective, that is valuable in terms of your argument, because I'm going to go big here. I'm going to call you valid. Because your life is valid, because how you've gone about your life is meaningful, and it's real, and it's authentic in its way. And who am I, who is anyone to tell you that your perspectives and how you've come to see the world as a result of your experiences isn't valuable? I mean, we could get into the political climates where some perspectives are more valuable than others, but I'd rather not, you'd rather not. Okay, so think about your role in all this and how you want to, it's also called sort of situational thinking, how you want to situate yourself in your argument. Okay, this one I should do pretty quickly. It's content analysis. This is Sociology 101. You look for patterns. You get into your notes and what did you see? How, if you're a tallier, what things did you tally the most? You got to think about what you can prove. What are those patterns telling you, right? And then what can outliers teach you? So if you only observed one thing once and it was weird, well, that could be argumentatively useful. Okay, so look for patterns. It's also called emergent design. It's got a lot of names. All right. Well, my watch says I'm off to a great start today. Oh, I'm crushing it, Steve. Your exercise rings are way ahead for this time of day. All right. So quantitative versus qualitative research. And again, you can do a mix. It's numbers versus words. Maybe you've had these definitions, but quantitative data is repetition. Facts, hard data is where your argument comes from. It's very kind of closely tied to non-participant observation. Qualitative is just that. Your impressions sit alongside the data. And you can switch. You can take one hat off, put another one on, put both hats on at the same time. Lots of ways to be successful. Okay, so last minute here. Your arguments can be big or small. They can be either. They can be both. Okay, so always, guys, tied extensively to the observation site. Don't lose track of that. The purpose of where you observe is kind of the motivating factor. What are people there to do? And is technology helping them or hurting them to do that thing? Okay, families go to dinner to spend time with families, to eat. It's up to you to define that. So big focus is on larger scale conclusions. My observation tells me blank about Ohio, about Mass, and about parents. Okay, so you draw sort of almost a generalization that you want to prove through the data that you've collected. All right, and small is much more personalized and sort of unique to you, and it's usually related to things you thought were true. And so your observation is going to either prove you right or change your thinking. And so it's going to be a bit more of a personal narrative. Does that make sense? I'm out of time. Thanks. Email me.